Welcome all, Democrats, Republicans, Al Gore if you're watching. This is the news desk of In the News, hosted by me, Nick Knappenberger. The only news show that doesn't only just take a look at the news, but one step further and ask the real questions about how we critically analyze and look at the news. It's like news inception, and I'm your Leo. Throughout this series, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most important news in the country and asking some experts how they feel this information is being represented in the media. I could think of no better topic for our pilot episode than the second impeachment of Donald Trump, former president and windmill expert.
An economy based on wind. I never understood wind. I know windmills very much. I've studied it better than anybody I know. And they say the noise causes cancer. You told me that one, okay?
With the Senate convening on February 9th to decide whether or not to convict Trump a second time, I decided now would be a good time to look at the whole I accidentally incited a riot that killed 4 of my supporters and a police officer. Last week, I sat down with former prosecutor and Lieutenant Governor of Illinois, Sheila Simon, to discuss this coup and how she sees it being represented in the news and other media. Let's take a look. Okay. Thank you, Sheila Simon, for coming here. You were a former Attorney General from 2011 to 2015 of the state of Illinois, and you were...
Governor.
Oh, I'm sorry, what? Oh, Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
You were the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois from 2011 to 2015. You were Assistant Prosecutor in Jackson County, and now you teach... what do you teach here at... you teach at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. What do you teach?
I teach here at the law school. I teach, among other things, property law to first-year law students, and this semester I'm also teaching writing to a whole bunch of them, which is really fun.
Awesome. That's tough. And you were telling me earlier that you've been watching a lot of the news about the impeachment coming up. It's being sent to the Senate here in about 2 weeks. The House passed it. Every Democrat in the House was part of it. That's a unanimous things. They really got it out for him. You watch the news and you see all this coverage of the impeachment. Do you think that it's fair coverage? Do you think that this is the kind of coverage that people need to see to be informed?
Yeah, I think the coverage is, I would say, fair for the most part, and I try and choose my news products to get that kind of a fair treatment. I think there probably is a lack in coverage of alternatives to impeachment. At least 2 senators are talking about censure of former President Trump, and I think that's an idea worth considering, particularly since it seems like the most recent vote doesn't show the necessary votes to convict the president on the impeachment. So I think a statement needs to be made about his behavior with regard to the insurrection, and we'll see in what form that statement comes.
Yeah. Do you have like a preferred? I guess we'll call it a statement now. That's a good word for it. Do you think that the censure is maybe better than, especially because the impeachment of a president who's already left office? Just a quick question: is there really a precedent for that, other than the Senator Belknap from the 1800s, of course?
Yes, there is, and there's
okay.
so little action in the world of impeachment that the precedents are few and far between. But there is precedent for impeaching someone who has already left office. It does seem to not be the best fit around, right? that it's obviously a good fit if there's someone who you need to get out of office. Now we don't have that need to get him out of office, but I do think there is a need to make that statement to hopefully prevent him from being in office again because of his it's very anti-democratic.
Yes.
Really what he seemed to have done was to inspire, both on the day of and leading up to it, action to stop the regular process of selecting a president and a peaceful transition.
Yeah, it's just insane that there are still people that think that, this isn't something that needs to be dealt with as seriously as it these things don't happen every once in a while, and when it gets to the point that partisanship is, where you're breaking into the Capitol building to try and stop a process that's, first of all, ceremonial. It doesn't matter if they stopped it or not. There's no legal, ramifications for stopping that certification, but yeah, it's just insane that we would think that doesn't need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just our opinion from the outside. I'm quite sure that members of Congress, members of the Senate, their staffs, and all the folks who work there as a regular part of business, their workday, are very sensitive to the fact that that's not a regular day in the democratic process, and is something that really can't be tolerated.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So in the United States, we've had 4 presidents that impeachment charges have been brought against. Trump twice, good for him, I guess. But no president has ever been convicted by the Senate. The closest we came was Nixon. He resigned before that happened. But do you think that this process, it hasn't seemed to work before? It's never removed a president from office. Do you think that this impeachment process is really in the best interests of people and voters? Or
I think there are occasions when it needs to be used. Here in Illinois, we had to impeach a previous governor, and he definitely needed to be removed from office. He had been arrested, charged with a crime that he was later convicted of, and was largely inattentive to his duties as governor. So there was lots of reasons to move him out, and the impeachment was the process that allowed that to take place. And I would say, even with regard to Nixon, although he was not convicted, I think it was the certainty of the coming conviction that got him to resign. So sometimes, well, you can't see the whole process playing out. A law can have an effect. And I'm really sure that the impeachment by the House had an impact on President Trump's activities in his final days in office, because if it needed to happen, if the Senate needed to instantly come into session and have a trial, convict him to get him out of office, it could be done. The House provided the vehicle in the form of the charge. So I think that, I'm guessing, it had an impact on the president's behavior in his last days in office.
Do you think that we maybe need to pay more attention, news sources in general, and even just our regular everyday people? Do we need to pay more attention to these smaller impeachments? Because it's not just the big ones. It's not always the president getting impeached.
Yeah, I think they're very good places to provide some illustrations of how impeachment can work. When we got to the impeachment of Blagojevich, one of the reasons we got there is that there was not a process similar to the 25th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. There was no standard about when the governor was unable to serve. So as we pay attention to these things, I think we learn more about our laws, learn how to use them better, and learn maybe where we need to make some changes in our laws.
What would you say to people that are mainly getting their information about not just this impeachment, but really all of their political information from either one news source, or we'll call them aggregates for now, but like your Facebook, your Reddit, where it's just a stream of news. It might not be true, but you don't care because it's more tailored to you. What would you say to someone who is in that mindset and that's how they get their information?
Yeah, that seems to be a strong desire on the part of lots of people to get information that is fit into their own biases that they have from the beginning. And that seems to be such a strong urge that I don't think we can tell people not to do that. But I think we can say, like we say about food, have a balanced diet, right? We should have a balanced diet of news. And if you want to see what people who look at the world the way you do are saying, great, get their commentary. But also, can you work in with that a more neutral source of news that can help you put that into a better perspective, that your side and your opinion is not the only opinion on most issues. So that would help a lot.
Yeah, that's great advice. What I always tell people is look for multiple sources and then look for the information that's constant. Do you think that's good advice, or do you have maybe some better advice?
No, I love the idea of multiple sources.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really significant. And multiple sources that don't all have that same one point of view. I'm sure you could find multiple sources that all fit your particular way left, way right point of view. Um, but multiple sources that include some that look at things from a balanced perspective.
Yes, and you hear fair and balanced a lot. But when you hear fair and what does that mean to you when you say, I like this news source because it is fair and balanced? What does fair and balanced mean to you as a lawyer and as just a citizen who consumes news media to inform themselves?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring up the law, because in the process of law, in the process of getting to a decision in a courtroom, the judge wants to hear the best advocacy from each side. That's really what our justice system is built on, that each side has someone who's a qualified representative who can look at the law, look at the facts, and say, here's how we see it from our side. And then the judge, after having heard both of those, can weigh and decide which one comes closer to the truth, which one comes closer to the policy that we want to have on a continuing basis. So I think if you can look for news sources that do something like that, that have a process, that engage in weighing. I'm a fan of the PBS NewsHour, and one of the features that they use is getting experts with different opinions. So you get qualified people from two different opinions and a moderator to promote the conversation. And you'll almost always disagree with one of the people, but at least you've had the experience of hearing what they have to say, and maybe some of that will cause you to say, that, I don't agree with this conclusion, but that's a new fact that I didn't know about. Maybe that helps me reshape my conclusion.
When you're disseminating news on your own, by that I mean you're just reading news and kind of processing it, do you think we need to be able to think like, maybe not a judge, like a legal judge, but in that same way, that we need to figure out what, and how do we decide that? How do we decide what side is advocating for our best interest and maybe their best interest?
Yeah, isn't that a good point? And I think that's maybe something that we all need to work on, and maybe we don't have the best standards for media literacy, for understanding how to select and process our news, to think critically, to when you hear something, read something, to say, rather than, wow, that's horrible, I'm going to forward this on to my friends because they should know that too, to maybe stop and think, that sounds horrible. Is it accurate? What's the source of information that I'm getting this from? Can I rely on them? And should I check before I take some action based on my gut reaction to reading this news?
Yes, that's put beautifully. Yeah. And then lastly, have you seen anything about the impeachment process, specifically on the news? But I mean, if you want to delve into like maybe stuff you've seen on social media, just floating around there, have you noticed any of it being either inaccurate or maybe not contextual enough?
I think what I've seen has mostly been fair. I think maybe what's missing is the bigger context, that it's a here's today's actions, here's what's coming up tomorrow, but the context of what can the House of Representatives do with all this information, what options do they have, what kind of message do they want to send, not just to address the January 6th insurrection, but to look forward and to say, how do we want to put down the marker that says this should not happen again?
Mm-hmm.
I think those are those are questions that we also ought to ask in addition to seeing what I think is largely fair coverage.
Sheila Simon, again, former lieutenant governor, teaches at SIU now. Thank you so much for coming by, and yeah, thank you for just sharing your opinion on this stuff and being able to put yourself out there. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking good questions, Nick.
Oh,
talk with you later.
Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude our first episode of In the News. Big thanks to Sheila Simon for coming out for an interview, and big thanks to you guys for sticking around till the end of the video. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. I'll see you next month, and we'll check what's in the news. Jesus, and you really need a better slogan than that, God.